Talk about Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom to begin with. So, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, as the title might clue you in, it is a sequel to Aquaman. Aquaman, which is, and I know apparently there's a lot of people who don't know the difference between all the different superhero universes. They don't know the difference between your Marvel and your DC. So this is DC, and this is where you have your Superman, and you have your Batman, and you have your Wonder Woman. And Aquaman was actually the most successful film within that. It was the one that went over $1 billion because the first Aquaman movie was released, and it was crazy, and it was mad, and it was big, and it did not take anything seriously, and it was like 5 movies in one, and there was bits where it just seemed to borrow from a whole bunch of different films. There was a bit at the end which I am totally convinced that they were homaging the song Shiny in Moana. There's a bit in the middle that looks like Mamma Mia. It's like essentially the first Aquaman movie was crazy, and this is like a sequel to it. In the meantime, DC have had problems because they essentially they've rebooted the whole thing. So they fired Henry Cavill, then they rehired him, and then they fired him, and then they hired James Gunn. So behind the scenes, there's all this mess that's going on, and it has been revealed. It has played itself out in a lot of the DC movies that have been released since. So Blue Beetle was an unfortunate victim, I think. The Flash was a mess. I mean, because the Flash was a mess because God knows what was going on in there. And now you have this film where if you care about plot and these sort of things, you now have Aquaman played by Jason Momoa, otherwise known as Arthur Curry, who is now the king of Atlantis. And the king of Atlantis, he is now getting to this point where he's thinking, you know what, I just wanted to go around and have adventures, but now I have to sit down and I have to sit in boring meetings, and I have to do all these different things. And the only reason I actually wanted to be king anyway is I just became king so that Atlantis wouldn't invade the surface world. So Atlantis wouldn't invade the human world, which I think is an interesting idea. And it's a recurring theme in this film that you have where they are interesting ideas that keep getting chucked. They're interesting ideas that that they just don't deal into, and they throw them away to come up with something that is just kind of like standard comic book movie. And I feel like with everything that has gone over the last 10 years or so, mostly through Marvel, the standard comic book movie doesn't really cut it anymore. It's kind of like if you're just going to give you the stuff where, now CG fights and set piece where blah, blah, blah happens. There needs to be something more to it. And I think that this just ends up being down the middle, by the numbers, stuff that happens. They go, okay, cool, we have this character from the first film and we lock them up in jail. Oh, but we want to do something with them. We will get them out of jail. And it's like, and you're like, and and they keep doing this thing where, how it is when you're watching a film and they set up certain rules and everything like that. And they set up, but if you do that, there will be repercussions. And then they go do the thing and then absolutely no repercussions whatsoever happen. That keeps happening in this film. They're like, you can't go do that because that would be a political thing with the Fisherman Kingdom. All right, cool, let's go do that. It's like you can't show your face when you're rescuing him. Why? Because it's the Fisherman Kingdom, and it'll become like a political thing and everything like that. He goes in there, they obviously see his face. The people who see his face aren't killed, and nothing happens. And I know people might say, want to talk about political intrigue in a superhero movie, what the heck are you thinking about? It's a comic book film and all that. But I still maintain to anybody who says anything like that if your world sets up some rules, you should live by those rules. You should follow through with those rules. And if you don't follow through with those rules, I don't care how simple the story you're telling is, your story falls apart. And I feel like that happens too often in this film. And there's bits where Jason Momoa, and I don't think it's his fault, I think it's because of everything that was going on in the background. There were apparently reshoots on this where they tried to rejig the story and all that. There's bits where his performance from scene to scene vary wildly. they vary wildly. And you're like, what just happened? It's like you were just all broy there, now you're this, and now you're... And you can just feel like it was like they were trying a whole bunch of different things, and then they cut something together. I don't think that the director of the film is not really doing interviews about the film, which makes me think that the studio got involved and took things out of his hands a little bit, and I don't think he's quite happy with it. Which is a bit because it's James Wan, and James Wan, when you let him do his stuff, he comes up with some crazy stuff what's the name of that film? Like Megan, the sort of killer doll movie that he did. So yeah, yeah. All in all, I think I'll give it a 3 out of 5 because it's competent. It's nothing that you haven't really seen before. There's attempts at humor that I really don't think work. There's characters from the first film that just get absolutely chucked off a cliff, almost like Amber Heard. And
I was going to ask because there were sort of varying suggestions, but off the back of the
on the back of the
various
Johnny Depp
lawsuits.
trial
Yes.
and all that, and things that she said, I don't think they ever meant to use her character in this film because the first film was almost kind of like like a romancing the stone kind of thing. That's just why it turns to Mamma Mia halfway through. This film, they've made no bones about the fact that it's a buddy comedy, and it's about Aquaman and his brother going off on a quest. The and pretty much nobody else gets a look in, but it is kind of it is a little bit conspicuous that when Amber Heard shows up, Amber Heard is mostly silent. but I also she's like she shows up and she's there and everything like that, and she kind of gets relegated because just in case I haven't said, I don't think I've said that at the beginning of this film, Aquaman and Mira have a daughter, they have a son rather. So he's now a dad and everything, and she kind of gets relegated to a role of mother who looks after the kid at home. When I mean, saying that, I don't even think the role amounts to mother who lives like she's in the film, she shows up a couple of times, but there might have been more on the cutting room floor. So I don't think it was I personally don't think it was a definite, we don't like Amber Heard, we're going to cut her out of this film. But with everything else that has gone on in the background and everything that's gone on in the real world, it's hard for it not to appear like that. So yeah, 3 out of 5. And Dolph Lundgren. Dolph Lundgren's in this film, and I don't know what has happened, but look, I remember Dolph Lundgren.
Does he not look like himself anymore?
No, he still looks like Dolph Lundgren, only with like a
He looks
massive,
like
a massive Lord of the Rings beard on and everything like that now. But it was very hard to understand every single word he said in the film, and I don't know because when I think about Dolph Lundgren, I think about him in films like Dark Angel. I feel like in Rocky Four and Showdown in Little Tokyo that I loved in the '90s
Red
and
Scorpion, that sort of thing.
yeah, that sort of thing. And I was thinking, I never remember thinking that Dolph Lundgren had diction issues or anything like that. But either it was in the mix or something like this, or maybe I don't know, if he's growing older or something like. It was really hard to hear anything he said. It was really, really hard to hear, especially because, and they give him a whole bunch of lines and they try and give him a subplot, which I think would have been better spent on Nicole Kidman's character or maybe on Amber Heard's character, but it just didn't really go anywhere. And it's a 3 out of 5, and we shall move on because I think I've already given this film way too much time than it deserves. So 3 stars for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and and even the Lost Kingdom of the title. It's so convoluted how they try and bring that in, but never mind. Oh my God! I just remember Pilu Asbeck, who I'm not sure that I'm saying that right because he has like a funky. Well, I'm not sure what country. I know he's from one of the sort of Scandinavian countries, and they have this letter in the middle of his name that looks like an A
Yeah.
and an E combined, and I don't know how you pronounce it. But this guy is a well-known character. He was in Game of Thrones. You see his face in one scene, and it's gone. And I'm thinking, how much did you pay for that one scene? It doesn't even have any lines. It's just so stupid. It reeks of something else going on. And this is a film that you can't talk about without talking about what was happening behind the scenes because whatever happened behind the scenes messed it up, in my opinion. So yeah, 3 stars for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom.